manage myself, got to manage my mind. The task is not easy, but the higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you don't want success in life, then don't hinder me. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. Oh, no. You are a CEO. Yes. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. A CEO. The whole world knows. A CEO. You are a CEO. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. I'm a CEO. You are. I'm a CEO. You are. Oh, let the whole world know. The time is here to celebrate. A CEO. I'm a CEO. Yes, let the whole world know. A CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. The time is here to celebrate.
I've got to manage myself, got to manage my mind. The task is not easy, but the higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you don't want success in life, then don't hinder me. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. Oh, no. You are a CEO. Yes. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. A CEO. The whole world knows. A CEO. You are a CEO. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. I'm a CEO. You are. I'm a CEO. You are. Oh, let the whole world know. The time is here to celebrate. A CEO.
The task is not easy, but to higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you want success in life, then don't hinder me. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. No. You are a CEO. Yes. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. A CEO. The whole world knows. A CEO. You are a CEO. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. I'm a CEO. You are. I'm a CEO. You are. Oh, let the whole world know. The time is here to celebrate a CEO. I'm a CEO. Yes, let the whole world know. A CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. You are a CEO. I'm a CEO. The time is here to celebrate.
I've got to manage myself, got to manage my mind. The task is not easy, but to higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you want success in life, then don't hinder me. You are a CEO. You are a CEO. No. You are a CEO. Yes. The time is here to celebrate. This is calling, so don't be late. A CEO.
easy, but the higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed. So no excuses.
I've got to manage myself. I've got to manage my mind. The task is not easy, but the higher heights I climb.
I'm determined to succeed, so no excuses, please. If you don't want success in life, then don't hinder me. Yes, let the whole world know you are a CEO.
Hello everyone, Michael Lee Parker here, and we tonight have another special show. This is about entrepreneurship. Is it in you? And we're talking about entrepreneurship and what are some of the things we need to consider in being successful entrepreneurs. You all know I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur for almost 20 years now, and seeing all of the ups and the downs and all of the things that you go through. There are some things that I want to share with you tonight that can help you. For those of you that are already entrepreneurs or are aspiring entrepreneurs, this show will be a wonderful, wonderful tool for you. So make sure you get your pen and pad and take notes. And we also have a wonderful guest that we'll be talking to later. So we're going to just have a great night tonight. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and what it actually means to be an entrepreneur. And now, some of you may not know. Let me put this up on the screen for you. Well, I introduced the show here already for you, but when you think about the word entrepreneur, this is really a French word, and there's many different things you can get into in terms of entre and preneur and what these things mean. To be a buyer, to be a taker, to work between parts. There's all kinds of things in the French definition. But when we think about entrepreneurship and think about that in terms of what it means in the culture, especially in America, really the process of designing, launching, and running a new business, which is often initially a small business. Now, every now and then you have people that start something new, have a lot of resources, and do things a different way. But for the most part, we're talking about entrepreneurship at its roots. And this is something that starts with someone being willing to take on that journey of that definition and all that comes with it. Now, a lot of times we might think we want to be an entrepreneur, but we have to really understand what it entails and what it actually involves. And so you out there to have, there's something on the inside and things that you want to actually accomplish, or you're already on that journey and you're looking for ways to go deeper. There's some things that I want you to really consider. There's some things I want you to think about. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is, you've no doubt heard this before, but follow your passion. Right? We all have a passion, and we should follow that passion. Well, I want to place a little question mark here about following your passion. Actually, I want to educate you tonight about why it's important to be careful about following your passion when it comes to entrepreneurship. Now, passion has its place, but we have to define that, and we have to be very careful. These are some real-life things that you need to understand. Now, let's go deeper into this. So when you think about most people, I'll use an example of people who win awards, like an Oscar, or, they win some sort of award, they get on stage, whether that's an entertainer, an athlete, and normally you see statements like this: don't let anyone tell you your dreams are not possible. Or people will say things like, you can do anything you want to do. Now, that is definitely a good mindset to have in terms of being positive. But when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about business, These statements are very dangerous because there's a lot of factors in terms of what makes a good business, what makes something successful, what is something that someone is willing to pay you for. There's a different set of rules when you're talking about entrepreneurship. Bruce Lee used to talk oftentimes when you're talking about boxing or you're talking about some structured forms of martial arts, it's very different than when you're talking about fighting. Fighting has there's no rules in fighting. It's a different set of rules. And when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about business, when you're talking about people's money, when you talk about people taking money out their pocket and giving it to you, there's a different set of rules. And sometimes we got to be careful when we're too focused on passion and not what it takes to make a business successful. Now let's go deeper. Let me explain. So there's the one mindset when you talk to someone and you say, I want to be successful. And as you see on the screen, the emoji there says, you got this, right? And sometimes that's how people feel. People feel like, you got this, you can do it. And that's good to have people around you that are, you know, basically telling you that. But when they hear what you want to do, and if they really know you, they might look more like this. As you see on the screen, you want to do what? So sometimes people say, I want to do this, I want to do that, but the people that know you, they might know the disconnect between what you want to do and your abilities. So you have to begin to make that connection to be a good entrepreneur. So keep that in mind. This is very important with respect to this topic. Now, let's look at this even deeper. Now, you see the beautiful picture here with the young ladies, and all of them are hanging at this jungle gym, and they're saying, we're going to be Olympians, right? Well, the truth is that's a wonderful dream. That's a wonderful passion. But it might not necessarily, for all of those young ladies, actually be something possible based on who they are, their makeup, their build, the way their coordination, just the actual real abilities they have. And so you got to find that balance between passion and believing in yourself, and then really being able to look at what it takes to make a successful business. These are two separate things, and sometimes they come together, but you got to understand the differences. Let's look at another example. Here's a young man, and this young man, you know, just genetically might not grow beyond 5'4". He's a young kid now. He's looking up at some ball player saying, one day I'm going to dunk on you for sure. And we would normally want to tell any kid, you can do anything you want to do, Johnny. Well, but at some point, when you're dealing with business, business is real. Business is not going to patronize you because you're a cute kid. People don't pay you for that. This is the real hard truth about business. So you have to understand the difference between passion and what really will create profits in a business. So again, let's look at another example. Here's a situation where we got a cute young girl. So I'm going to be one of the greatest dancers ever. Great for them to have that passion. But what if she's not coordinated? What if she has no rhythm at all? I mean, unteachable not having no rhythm. I'm not talking about just leave, maybe you can get some tips. Some people just don't have some rhythm. And these are real things that they'll begin to discover as they go through their life. They'll see things that they want to do, but maybe they don't have that ability in a way that allows them to operate at an excellence level that people will pay for. So they can spend their whole life trying to get to something that is not easy for their makeup to do. Now, this is something you have to consider when you're dealing with entrepreneurship. Now, let's look at this from this angle, though. Following your passion is great for hobbies. So make sure you keep that in mind. Hobbies are great. You can follow your passion as long as you want. I like playing some piano. I play a little drums. I do a little, you know, I love music. I sing a little bit, all these little things. I like art. I like to write, right? But when you're talking about business, I got to look at a different set of rules. So remember, follow your passion is great for your hobbies, but not necessarily for entrepreneurship. So this is something I want you to keep in mind. It's a very important factor. Now, let's look at this individual looking in the mirror, and sometimes a dream job really is a dream. And we have to be honest about that so that we can really get closer to the real success of being good at something that people will pay you for. And this is, again, this is the hard facts. These are the cold, brutal, hard facts of the case when you're thinking about being a good entrepreneur. And so, again, imagine, again, always being able to keep our dreams, but make sure we wrap those dreams in some other considerations that is successful for entrepreneurship. Now, let me explain to you what I mean. Here's something to think about. When you think about dream job, well, this is something that I like to say. Happiness and fulfillment at work is oftentimes not because of the job. So we might say the dream job, I'll be happy then. A lot of times people that are really happy and fulfilled at work, it's not even the job, but the overall experience, the impact that they're able to make, and the people that they're working with, a lot of time is what creates that happiness and fulfillment. There's people doing jobs that, you know, maybe to the surface might not look like the funnest things to do, but they love who they're working with. They love the impact they make, and they love the overall experience. So we have to be careful. Even when we think about what will make us happy and what we're doing, we have to measure by the right set of rules. Now, having said that, I want you to look at this diagram. So passion minus the ability to do that passion is not even possible to accomplish it, right? So if I can't literally, if I'm not good at math and I say I'm gonna be an astrophysicist, right? That's my passion. It's just, it's not gonna be possible, right? If I'm not an individual that is tall, but I say I'm gonna play center for the Lakers one day, that is just not possible because my ability is not matching the passion. Now let's look at another scenario. So here's a scenario where my passion and my ability is there. Well, now I have possibility. Possibility is there, and there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with pushing yourself and saying, hey, I have an ability, I believe in myself, and all things are possible. There's nothing wrong with that when your ability can match that passion. All right, but now we're dealing in possibility, and is possibility even enough? Let's look deeper at this. Every day is full of possibility, and we should always, focus on having possibilities. Possibilities are great, but in entrepreneurship, possibility is not enough. When you really want to be successful, if you really want to do something that can last, if you really want to build something that people will pay you for, you got to move deeper and further than just possibility. And that brings us to another word, which is this word, opportunity. So opportunity is something totally different. Opportunity means there is a real life, tangible, factual, something there that I actually can do that not only matches a possibility and dealing with ability and dealing with, passion. There's actually a market for what I'm doing. There's something that someone is interested in. The person that founded Twitter started off saying, here's an easy way to send messages to people, text messages, and people might want to know what other people are doing. He wasn't passionate about it. Yeah, just a random idea. He saw an opportunity. There's people who created opportunities that are multi-billion-dollar opportunities. They weren't passionate about it at all, but they saw a niche, they saw a door, they saw a gap, and they were able to move within that gap because they found a need that people will pay for. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you got to be very careful. You can be stuck on a passion and miss an opportunity. That goes right with what we're talking about here on this slide that you see. You can be blinded by your passion and shooting in the wrong direction. So you're so passionate about something, but you're coupling that passion with entrepreneurship, and sometimes they don't align. So sometimes you've got to make sure you can actually look at the right target. You got to make sure your eyes are wide open and you're able to see what you should be shooting for to be successful in business. That's very different than just fulfilling something that's a dream or that's a passion. You can have both, but don't commingle when you're thinking about building the best business that you can build. Now, so before wrapping up this segment, something I want to leave with you. As you see on this diagram, so sometimes your greatest opportunity, I want you to remember this, sometimes your greatest opportunity is actually coming from walking a different way. Not only a different way than the market, not only a different way than, you know, what everyone else is doing, but sometimes it's a different way than even what you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's a different way than even what you wanted to do. Some of the greatest successes that I've ever had was doing things I don't necessarily want to do. As a CEO, I have to do things every single day that I don't like doing. But if I don't do it, we will not succeed. So we have to understand business is about doing what is required to meet an opportunity that will lead to profits and lead to gain. Now, when you can do that and keep your character and keep your integrity, that's something that is always special. And you always, you know, that has to do with who you are as a person. But you want to make sure you understand the difference between possibility and opportunity. So to sum it up, I want to leave you with this. Remember, true entrepreneurs don't necessarily follow their passion. They find an opportunity and they do it with passion. Keep that in mind. And if you understand that, you can maneuver this game called entrepreneurship in a new way and open your mind to new opportunities. We're going to have a short commercial break. I want you to watch this video and listen closely. When we come back, I'm going to talk about 5 things successful entrepreneurs just can't ignore. We'll be right back.
A friend of mine gave me some advice, and I forget the actual quote, but it basically said, embrace your life, its pain, its sorrow, its adversity. And I think that one of the things you realize as you get older is there's going to be bad days, there's going to be dark days, but you got to embrace it, because that pain is what makes you stronger. Success is not measured on the days when the sun shines. Success is measured on the dark, stormy, cloudy days. And if you can't absorb failure, you're never going to meet success.
One of the best things that could ever happen to anybody is hitting rock bottom, for a couple reasons. I mean, I've seen anybody that's ever done anything big in their lives, they will share with you about a moment of hitting rock bottom. The reason why rock bottom is very, very important is because it tells you nothing comes easy. You know, you yourself, when you hit rock bottom, you learn a lot about yourself when you hit rock bottom, because you find out what you really are made up of.
That's why we love to invest in entrepreneurs in Shark Tank that have been battle tested. Failure is what makes you stronger.
You make decisions and come out of things when you hit rock bottom and you start realizing this thing goes by like this, life goes by pretty quickly, and how you respond when you hit rock bottom will say a lot about your life.
If you don't learn how to master the breaking point, you may have many ventures, but you will not accrue massive success in any area because you have not mastered the breaking point. Every time life runs you to a breaking point, you will give up and quit. You will back away and run. You will say, this is too hard, this is too emotional, this is too stressful, and you will back away. You cannot be a champion until you have survived a breaking point.
Run! You should run, because you shouldn't live in darkness. But if you keep on running, you're gonna see that light. In the beginning, it just looks like a little circle. And that's when things start working out a little bit. You start to say, hey, I'm getting the hang of this. I'm getting some rewards from this. And as you keep going towards it, what happens to that little circle, right? It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you just keep running. And you start to feel the euphoria and the passion, the excitement associated with getting closer and closer and closer until it starts to absorb you.
All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video about hitting rock bottom. It's so important because entrepreneurship is not all about the glitz and glory. It's about what you can take and keep on going, because business is real. Business is life, and you have to be able and willing to actually embrace that if you want to succeed. And this leads right into our next segment here about the 5 things well, I should say 5 things successful entrepreneurs just can't ignore. These aren't the only things, but these are some things I want to share for tonight. So as you can see here on the screen, these 5 things successful entrepreneurs can't ignore. I want you to listen very closely, because here at URCO, we don't just talk about life, career, and business any old way. We always go back to the 4 villains, the 4 enemies, right? Self-ignorance, fear, dealing with insecurities, dealing with being mediocre in any way. These things limit our success. And so a lot of times people think entrepreneurship is about business, and they miss that entrepreneurship is really about them. And so let's start off. It kind of goes to number 1. The first thing I want to expose to you as something we can't ignore is the subject of self-esteem. Self-esteem has to do with how we esteem ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. And did you know this directly begins to interfere with how you approach your business? Because when challenge comes up, when you have to work with other people, when someone crosses you, when someone gives you some hard feedback, if you've got certain things in you about how you feel about yourself, it will directly impact you and cause you to shut down when you shouldn't. If you're overconfident, you don't realize how you make other people feel, and no one wants to work with you because you esteem yourself too highly. So you have to have a balance in how you esteem yourself. If you're not aware of who you are, how you think, and what makes you tick, then how can anyone else work with you when you don't know you? How can anyone else trust you to help them when you can't help yourself? So self-esteem is important. You bring that with you to your business. You bring that with you to your idea. You bring that with you to the people who work with you. So having your self-esteem in a healthy place is directly related to being a successful entrepreneur. Sometimes we can't handle failure, and sometimes we can't handle success. Sometimes people, as soon as they get any success, it changes them. They don't know how to stay level-headed as an entrepreneur. And so then that success turns into a failure. So we have to have that. Now, let's go to number 2. Another key area is determination. So I can't say enough about determination. As an entrepreneur, I've been through so much. I've had to close businesses. I've started new businesses. I've had to reinvent myself. I've lost team members. I've started with new team members. I've had to sacrifice. I've had to go without to keep the business going. I've suffered humiliation. I've had to deal with all kinds of things that entrepreneurs have to deal with. And when you're determined, see, we were talking earlier about, following your passion versus following an opportunity. When you know that everything is aligned, then now determination can kick in. When you know you're really doing something you have the ability to do, and there's an opportunity for it, now you can be determined. And so determination, how far will you go when it's a tough mountain to climb? How far will you go when everything is not just peaches and cream? This is, again, getting back to that bounce back ability that I like to talk about when things begin to come up. So determination is not so much what everyone can see. It's those night hours that no one can see. It's what you do when you're by yourself. It's that time that no one's watching, that you keep on going. It's not even just keeping working physically. It's also mentally staying in a place where you really believe you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish. One philosopher once said, the heights of great men were not reached and kept by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, they were toiling upward in the night. And this is what you got to be able to do when you're talking about being determined. All right, so let's continue to number 3. Number 3 is just as important. And so as you see on the picture, the cute little duckies following their mom, I want you to know in entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about leadership, being the boss, right? Being in charge and all of that. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs are only great because they were willing to follow. Being willing to follow is just as important as being willing to lead. Fellowship is just as important as leadership. Being willing to realize when you need to benchmark, you need to look at what someone has done and borrow from it. Learn from someone who's already been there. A lot of problems with entrepreneurship is you start finding people that are not willing to listen. They're stubborn. They don't want to take any advice. And I found that there were times in my journey that I got that way. And I had to realize analyze. I needed to check myself. Be willing to listen to others. Be willing to learn from others. Everything doesn't have to be a new idea. Everything doesn't have to come from you. Everything doesn't have to be invented. Some things are already excellence, borrow from that excellence and use it as a means to your own excellence. So again, the willingness to follow is very, very important. Never be unable to listen, to hear, and to follow something that is really worth following. And that's the key. Don't follow just any old thing, but you can follow something that's worth following. All right, number 4, research and planning. Now, I can't tell you how many times we see entrepreneurs, and I've tried to coach entrepreneurs that just did not put the work in to being prepared. They didn't research and they didn't plan. They have a good idea. They even have passion. And there is even an opportunity, but they didn't do their homework. Research and planning is very critical if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur. You got to know your market. You got to know who came before you. You got to know who you're competing with. You got to know how the dynamics are changing. You got to research the things around what you're doing, not just what you're doing, but what's around what you're doing. What is direct and indirect? You got to also have a plan. You know, a lot of times we are so passionate and so inspired, we forget to write something down and figure out what we're doing, right? We say, no one's following me. But then someone said, but where are you going? He said, well, I'm going over there. Well, how? Describe to me the roadmap to get there. Where's the directions? He said, well, I don't have those details. You say, well, I can't follow you till you know where you're going. So research and planning is very, very important. And we've got to be willing to put the energy in and make sure that you really know what it is you're trying to do. And remember that one of the greatest things ever begins to start when you begin to write something down. One book, think about it, one book. It creates movies, video games, characters, clothing lines, because someone wrote something down, created a narrative and a story about what they were doing. And you've got to find out, what is your story as a business? Who are the villains you're trying to overcome? What is the hero? And what is the superpower that you have that makes you different? Why will someone give you money? And you can describe that story if you put in the time. All right, number 5, last but not least, know your numbers. So I can't say enough about you do all of this in business and you've not taken the time to know your numbers. You don't know what your cost is to get a customer. You don't know what your profit margins are. You don't know what your gross margins are. You don't know the difference between gross margin and profit margin. Being able to understand your cost, your true cost, not just the cost of the widget that you use to sell to someone, but the cost of your time, the value of your time, the true cost of the people you need to work with to get something done. That person who's doing something for you now because they're your friend, that's not going to last. There's going to be a cost for that down the road. Making sure you really understand the true dynamics and do it based on the worst case scenario so that no matter what comes up, your numbers are strong enough to sustain whatever may happen. So remember, you have to take the time to build a business model through numbers. Now remember, we can build a business plan, we can make fancy presentations, we can have all kinds of vision boards, we can have everyone jumping up and down about any idea. The key is, can you tell your story with numbers? When I can look at something that has numbers and it literally tells me how you're drawing in your customer, how you're converting that customer, how that customer is going to translate into revenue, and what is the cost associated with getting that customer and scaling up to get more of those customers, and why is this profitable over time? And when you can tell that story with numbers, now as an entrepreneur, you have a roadmap to true success, because at the end of the day, it takes money to make money, and it takes money to sustain a business. All right, so I hope you enjoyed these 5 things successful entrepreneurs can't ignore, and these are just a few things to keep in mind. And I want to now go to another key video about a little bit more about how to be an entrepreneur. And when I come back, I have a special guest that I will introduce to you then. So if you want to meet them, it's just someone who knows a lot about entrepreneurs and deals with them every day. You're going to want to meet this man. So So make sure you come back right after this video. We're going to move forward. We'll see you in just a minute.
Many of us want to become entrepreneurs. Starting your own business is one of the biggest dreams of our times. But how do you get to be an entrepreneur? Most of the advice focuses on the practicalities, writing a business plan, raising money, finding staff, marketing and PR. We'll go down a different route. In our eyes, at the heart of successful entrepreneurship lies something oddly more abstract, an accurate insight into the causes of human unhappiness. To be an entrepreneur means essentially to become an expert in the things that make life difficult for people. That's because every properly ambitious business is in some way trying to fix things for other people. And the bigger and more original what you're trying to fix happens to be, the more successful your business can be. Because consumer society is now well developed, it may be easy to think that all the big problems out there already have thousands of fixes anyway. Think of all those car companies or pizza outlets or news websites. We surely have enough of everything. What could we possibly add to what's already out there? But to get a sense of the vast opportunities that still remain in capitalism, all you need to do is ask yourself where and in what areas you're unhappy in the course of an average day. Every unhappiness is really a new business waiting to be born. Your frustrations are a nearly inexhaustible source of raw materials out of which the businesses of the future can be built. So while there may already be plenty of breakfast cereals and t-shirts and cell phones and cab rides for sale, there's so much more that frustrates and depresses us. Think of how difficult it is to get on with one's partner, educate children, cope with anxiety, discover what you want to do with your life, find a nice place to live, calm down in the evening. One could go on and on. Our griefs and irritations are endless, thankfully for the budding entrepreneurs. The biggest first step to take towards entrepreneurship is therefore to learn to study your own unhappiness and what might possibly heal it for you and others. When profits decline in businesses, it's really the result of too many people throwing themselves at trying to fix the same area because they can't think of anything more innovative to do, rather than start a new airline, mobile phone company or supermarket chain. And by contrast, healthy profits are a reward for understanding and mastering an area of human distress ahead of anyone else. Of course, ideas aren't enough on their own. You need to take care of practicalities and money, but they won't help you if your original psychological insight into human unhappiness isn't sound. And by the same token, if your insight into what makes people unhappy is razor sharp, and your solutions bold, then however difficult the journey, your business will stand a high chance of making money and benefiting humanity too.
Studio, I have a wonderful, wonderful man. This is, I'm gonna make sure I say this right, Evodio Walle.
That's correct.
That's correct. He goes by Evo a lot of times, but how you doing? Welcome. Such a great pleasure to have you on the show. Now this, let me go to my screenshot here. I got a beautiful picture of here. Let's pull this up. He's actually the president and chairman of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Contra, Costa, and Alameda County. And those are some big counties. And so I know this is just one of the things that you do, but this is a big thing that you do. And tonight we're talking about entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to have you on the show. I know we're talking about some things and looking to possibly, work together on some things. But before we dive into all that, I want to introduce just you. Tell everyone just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of how your journey led you to where you are now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mr. Parker. It's an honor to be here on your show.
Thank you.
A dynamic presentation and company you've got going on here. The man behind the mission basically is really just kind of leading back to a point in time where I came to a lot of realizations of, as you were pointing out earlier, opportunities that needed to be filled. And so I just stepped up and started basically rolling up my sleeve. So don't let the suit fool you here. Right. I actually do get into the nitty gritty of things. And so couple of decades basically in the making now as a tech marketer. I've brought those skills over into the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which as you were sharing is comprising an area of about 3 million people here in the East Bay in Northern California.
So before you go to there because I want to spend some time on that. Tech marketing.
Yes.
So you started off in tech marketing. Tell me a little bit about that. Well,
Sure.
and first, for some who don't know what that is, what is tech marketing?
Yes, well, that's just a niche within the broader marketing complex. And really, when you think about where marketing came from, it started out in the print days and maybe even preceded that, if you want to really get down to it.
Right.
So I grew up with the industry basically around the time when print was turning into online. And so from that point in time, I just grew with the practices, and being someone who had, in essence, had a the creative space was kind of a lure for me. I just pursued one opportunity that led me into the other, and eventually tech enters the picture, and we all know the momentum that tech has and the impact. I mean, even librarians were getting sucked into, you know, the Yahoo indexing opportunity, So I was one of those people that, in essence, just kind of followed the wake. And you know, when you're a practitioner and you're really passionate about the discipline, you just start to really stack your skills. And you know, I considered myself to be somewhat of an artist, and so I like to get my hands, as we say in the Hispanic culture, in the masa, in the dough.
In the masa?
In the masa.
All right, I'm adding that.
So my hands are all up in the masa.
My hands is in the masa.
That's right.
It definitely is. Well, let me ask you something. So, you know, there's entrepreneurship and there's entrepreneurship, which is I'm inside of a company with an entrepreneurial spirit and mentality. So before we get into the chamber, we're going to spend most of our time on that. This, you know, tech marketing journey, was it in different companies? Is more, you know, I can tell you're always entrepreneurial minded, but were you in what type of companies did you work for that kind of, you know, gave you this platform to get in the masa? Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah. Well, certainly, you know, you start off by just being curious and getting yourself into whatever type of company you can. So this can start off when, you know, when you're a little kid and you're, you know, getting your first job. You know, you can be inquisitive and start asking questions and kind of, you know, want to see the puppet master, you know, behind the stage and see how things work. So as time progressed, I just kind of got deeper and deeper and into bigger and bigger opportunities. So the types of companies that I had been engaged in were Fortune 100, Fortune 500 types. So Cisco, Symantec, Autodesk, Wells Fargo. These are companies that have basically really kind of cross that threshold of that scale threshold that, you know, basically turns into a really impressive operation, and there's plenty of stuff there to sort of apply yourself towards it, you know, and you learn little by little.
So you were really with some of the big boys. I mean, there's a lot, you know, to learn from in an environment like that. So let's fast forward to the chamber. So now you're in this position and you're dealing with, you know, you were kind of starting down that journey. You mentioned about 3 million and so forth. Tell me a little bit more about how many entrepreneurs and, you know, I guess it's not just small business, but would you say, you know, what type of influence does this organization for Contra, Costa, and Alameda County, how many people are you dealing with that you would consider entrepreneur, small business type of individuals?
Sure. So like with any organization that has a constituency at large, you know, you're always trying to grow the size of that audience. So for us right now, we're focusing on a constituency of about 3 million. That's the population of the East Bay. That's in essence one county, Contra Costa, having 19 cities, and Alameda County comprising 14 cities. So combined, it's a pretty broad area. We like to think that we're speaking to everybody, but the Hispanic Chamber, having an ethnocentric kind of niche, tends to be considered someone that kind of speaks to that Hispanic population, which is 25% in Contra Costa, 24% in Alameda County. So that's basically just, you know, for the most part, about a quarter of that 3 million. And so knowing what the total size of the opportunity is, we have a long time ago just pursued the broader audience, and in fact all of our programming is in English. We don't have actual programs in Spanish per se. We have some niche activities that are going down into that grassroots level, but for the most part the chamber as an organization is really taking a broad brush approach.
So one thing I found really great about what you're doing and just the vision that you have, and you're talking about ethnocentricity and things like that. If you look at the fact that you're not limiting it to the Hispanic culture, although you want to help, you know, the Hispanic community, of course, but you are broadening to be able to bring support to all people, and then also like the fact that you're incorporating technology, or you're embracing it, which I know there's a lot of chambers that I've seen that don't really do that. So, you know, tell me a little bit about how you got there, where you saw that there needed to be this broader vision of what this could do.
Sure. So I was in a meeting with a company that came to survey the leadership in the town of Concord, the city of Concord, about what to do with a very giant parcel of land, the old Navy weapons station. They wanted to know, you know, a bunch of things, but one of the questions was, what do you think the future of the Hispanic Chamber is? And then I, you know, in my, you know, emboldened state, you know, thought, you know, the vision of the Hispanic Chamber is basically a point in time when there is no Hispanic Chamber, because when people transcend that level of thinking where ethnocentric organizations are not required, then, you know, you have certainly reached the pinnacle of the, you know, the kind of a point of ascension, you know, for a culture.
Right, and for the community as a whole. Absolutely. So what about technology? I could tell, so that's a powerful statement, by the way. Hats off to you for making that statement. I hope it, you know, we keep moving in that direction, you know, but what about technology? I can tell you, is it because of the tech marketing that made you think about, hey, all of this platform I have now with this chamber, let's incorporate some of the things I've seen that technology can do, which I think all entrepreneurs are faced with right now, how to use technology in a meaningful way.
Sure, well, everything is tech. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we are tech to a certain extent, you know, the tech of the celestial, you know, creator, however you want to, you know, look at it. So the lines are blurring, in fact, you know, between what is analog and what is tech. And so, you know, you've got the abacus, which was tech at some point, the little, you know, bean counting things that, and so, you know, these are forms of tech that at some point, you know, served a purpose. And so my relationship with tech has really just been sort of a means to an end, and that end has been to create, to kind of to take things forward, to mobilize things. It's definitely leverage, if you will.
And that's really what technology should be, right? Because when the wheel was invented, that was technology, right? Anything that makes something easier to get from, you know, to accomplish a need is really technology. So in a sense, you know, I can see how you've applied that. Let's talk a little bit about, now you deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, and even larger companies, even, you know, political organizations. What are some common things that you feel entrepreneurs are dealing with right now? And you know, here we are in 2019. There's been so many things that have happened, and the climate is very different. What do you feel are some things that you see that entrepreneurs are dealing with right now?
I think finding relevance and certainly tapping into that aspect of their environment that they can, in essence, connect with and be relevant. So in the chamber, we have a community commerce government model, which in essence is comprising kind of our communications approach. It's a trifecta of communication where we try to target community, community aspects within whatever it is that we're doing, commercial-centric initiatives, and then we tap into things that matter to civic leadership. So when we have an entrepreneur that comes into the chamber and is focused on selling whatever service or widget, we try to expand their awareness of what's going on around them in the community and in civic leadership. So no matter who you are, if you really think hard enough, let's say you're a realtor, there are things happening in your vertical that basically coming from the civic leadership, all the legislation that impact how housing and development works, and then there's the community, you know, how that development impacts community, price fluctuations, access to capital. So really what we're doing is we're trying to help people move beyond that me-centered perspective on how their business or career works, and plug them into a broader kind of a state of consciousness, awareness.
Now let me tap into that, because that's a very interesting point. And I back to, because you know we're still talking about entrepreneurship here tonight. So how important is it for today's entrepreneur to think broader than their product or their, you know, their store, but to see this big world around them and find, again, we were talking earlier about opportunities. Like they might be passionate about their store, but if you tap this store and this over here and this over here and this over that, your store would scale much faster, but you don't even see the world around you. And it seems like you're trying to enable people to see that, but how important do you think that is?
It's huge. It's everything. In fact, it's coming back to the center. So if you consider that right now with youth, one of the biggest challenges that they have is attention deficit disorder.
That's
now,
right.
When we were little, I mean, one, you know, smack and we were, you know, back in alignment,
That's
you know,
right.
and our attention deficit disorder was gone.
It went
you know,
away,
but there were fewer things to focus on, you know, to the kids.
Fewer distractions.
Yes, exactly. And so now with the internet and everything, people of all ages have tons of things to focus on. So now I think that what we're dealing with here really is that people are abusing their freedom to the extent that they've basically let themselves dissipate out into the, you know, fringes of what's possible and have not focused on a definiteness of purpose and applied themselves to actually reach one goal, and then maybe from there going on to the next goal. So that's happening with everyone from little kids on up to, you know, mature entrepreneurs even.
And do you think that's impacting, you know, this distraction in the world today? I forget how many hundred times people look at their cell phone in one day or something, but do you feel like this distractedness is also limiting entrepreneurs because it's coming into how they think in their business too, and not being able to focus, stay aligned, and drive toward a goal? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. You know, if somebody tells you that a good social media tactic or a good marketing tactic is to leverage social media, and then you find yourself playing on Facebook all day, that is a, you know, you've been like sucked into, you know, the whole online experience. And you know, you're not really leveraging it at that point. You're just diluted now at that point. You know, your attention isn't here or there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. So when you think about a lot of the businesses that you see, I know a lot of them are coming to the chamber because they want to network, they want to grow. What do you feel is some of the things that entrepreneurs should consider today if they want to grow, if they really want to grow their business? And this, you know, doesn't take as much to start the business, but growing the business is where you really start to see true entrepreneurs separate from those who just started a business, or what some say entrepreneurs, right? So what do you say to people who say, you know, how do I get my business to grow?
You know, I've seen so many entrepreneurs say this in a number of ways, and instead of going back to these, you know, examples like Gary Vaynerchuk and just even yourself earlier, you know, when you were speaking on this very topic, I want to go back to an experience in a taxi cab where a gentleman from Pakistan had picked me up at my home and was taking me to a location. My car was who knows where, and I was in a taxi cab, and he was basically dispatching other cabs to other locations, and he told me that he was covering for, you know, his relative who is also now on vacation, and it's now his turn to kind of manage that. And he was telling me about his trip back home where he had, in essence, started this business basically, and he had, in essence, gotten enough money to where he could come to the U.S. And long story short, the gentleman, in essence, brought to light a very key principle that you don't need something very lucrative, very you can use a simple idea. You can go after something that just simply fills a need, apply yourself, and you can turn it into something massive. So what did this gentleman do is he focused on selling bolts. Like nuts and bolts.
Really?
And so I thought, you know, this guy basically started this, you know, massive business over there. He came to the U.S., you know, with that. He had gotten some kind of some kind of investment visa, and now he was launching a cab company. Of course, this was like this was in the wake of Uber, so the guy probably got you know, wiped out by that. But the point though is that at some point in time he discovered that you don't need to get super fancy about where you start.
Right.
That you can basically take the simplest of ideas, as long as you're filling a need, apply yourself, and then out of that is going to come some
And
result.
that's where the opportunity is. He found an opportunity, right? And that's what entrepreneurship is about. And I know we can talk for a while on this. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I mean, we got to have you back and to talk, talk about many different topics. But I want you to share a little bit as we're kind of nearing the close here, but you share a wonderful Captain Crunch story, and and I want you to tell it. But sometimes people feel that they got to have everything perfect to get something done, and being able to know where your niche is, because if you know what your niche is, everything else can come later that helps to make that niche better. But if you can find that thing, like, this is really what everyone really wants, this is what they're going to buy, this is what's going to attract them, this is what's going to draw. And I love how you talk about the Captain Crunch story, because it's a really great principle to learn from it. Why don't you talk a little about that?
So I don't know if it's an actual incident that happened in the consumer packaged goods arena, where they were, in essence, but this is kind of marketing lore by now, where they had this box and the captain and basically the whole marketing vehicle established before they knew what they were going to put inside the box.
Amazing.
So they first made sure that the channel was wide open and that it was going to be aligned basically to fill that need, that niche, that slot on the shelf.
Right.
And then after the fact, they came up with the puffy, starchy, crunchy, bright-colored, little sugary, things that drop in there, and off they went. And so that was basically Captain Crunch.
Right. And then came Crunch Berries later, and adding new flavors.
And how different are they really? It's just, but the little characters on the boxes, the packaging, and most importantly, as you like to point out, the opportunity. They saw the opportunity. They already knew how they were going to strike. And it just didn't really matter what they were going to strike with.
Absolutely. And they weren't, and I would go on to say they weren't passionate about cereal, but they saw an opportunity. And they did it in a passionate way. And just like people don't realize McDonald's is really a real estate strategy. More than it is about burgers and French fries. So to know what is the true thing that is driving your business. And so listen, I'm enjoying this discussion with you, and so I want to give you just a few seconds to give some final remarks to I know there's a lot you do to help the community, so we thank you for the things you do in the community and for being an outstanding leader. What are some things that you would just say to the entrepreneurs that are listening, just maybe a little bit of a word of advice to help them keep going? What's some final thoughts you would give them?
Well, I think that now with Google and in the internet age, we have so many places to go and get everything just by Googling it, right? And so in my experience, one of the things that we've not been able to Google up to this point is culture. And one of the things that we strive for in the Hispanic Chamber community and all of the activities that we put out there is what we call familia, or family, right? And so I just want to commend you for the culture that you've established here, and all the familia that you've created around the You Are CEO movement. So,
thank you.
Just commend you for that. And so thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And so here you have it, Evodio Walle. I think I'm saying it the short way, and so I really appreciate having you on the show. And listen, I hope all of you entrepreneurs out there, you got a lot from this show, and we had the icing on the cake to have a wonderful guest. And those of you out there that, again, are looking for support and help, this is also a great vehicle, the Hispanic Chamber of Contra, Costa, and Alameda County, so check them out. But as always, we thank you for tuning in, and I just want to give you some final thoughts. So we're going to introduce our next show here. So I want all of you out there to keep in mind that if you really want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to really think about the opportunities that are out there, that you have a good skill set and a means to approach and fulfill and go after it in the most passionate way that you can. And so we wish you all success, but remember, everything starts still with you. You are a CEO, you run the business of you. And so now, I want to remind you, so let's bring our screen back up here. If you're not a part of the movement, go to urceo.com MichaelLeeParkerCO.com. Join the movement, register to be a part. Again, this is something you want to be a part of. You can join the club as well. We also want to tell you about our next show. So our next show will be on April 22nd, and that show will be a build-up of this show. It's called Run Your Business. Don't let it run you. And so we're going to get into some of the details of some of the things you have to do to run your business the right way, so you don't want to miss that. So all of you out there, I'm Michael Lee Parker. Thank you so much for tuning in. But remember, you are a CEO. You run the business of you, and let the whole world know that you are a CEO. Have a great night.